So one of the biggest challenges is consumers are I think hesitant to spend money. We're seeing a swing to used cars, as happens, because people have to drive. South Africa is a big place. The UK fits into South Africa 9 times. So it's a big landmass, and we're a car commuting nation. That's what we are.
Yep. Okay, so for the benefit of the viewers and the listeners, if you could tell us who you are, where you've come from, and your position, please.
George Mienie, CEO of AutoTrader South Africa. Landed here this morning.
Pretty tired?
Everybody wants me to go to sleep for some reason. I said, no, I'm fine. I'm fine, thanks. I'll sleep
The jet lag's slowly creeping in.
Yeah, it's only 2 hours. It's not bad.
That's not too bad, is it?
No.
Apparently, you're most creative when you're tired, anyway. So maybe that will help.
Yeah, I heard a little story that Einstein used to. Was it Einstein? I don't know if it was Einstein. He used to have his most creative moments as he woke up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was it Einstein? Yeah.
I read that. I start work about 6 a.m. I hate mornings, but I do tend to get stuff done then. It's weird, isn't it?
So I don't know if that's tired theory. Maybe it's the reverse. When you're tired, you're like, oh, you know what I heard? It was your brain waves change.
Right. Okay.
So maybe that same phenomenon when you wake up or when you're tired, your
Possibly.
brain waves are slowing down.
Brilliant.
Maybe.
Well, if you do want a little nap, don't worry. Just I'll just
No,
carry
all
on
right.
rambling onto the camera. It's
If
fine.
you hear a thud on the table, it was me.
I'm sure most people won't need this, but if you could just give us a quick introduction to your business.
Yeah, so AutoTrader South Africa, general kind of definition of a marketplace. I like to put what we do into a couple of buckets. The first one is aggregator of content. It's just my definitions. Aggregator of content, takes third-party content and puts it onto a website. So we're not that. And then a classified listings business. And for me, a classified listings business is what we used to be. When we were a print magazine, and that is really taking adverts from dealers or selling consumers and sticking them into a classifieds magazine or even a classifieds website.
Okay.
And what we're becoming fast is what is referred to as a marketplace. And if you think about a traditional marketplace being the meeting of buyers and sellers, but then the facilitation of the transaction.
Okay.
And for me, that kind of sums up the definition of a marketplace.
What's the biggest misconception about AutoTrader?
The biggest misconception, sure, that's a very tough question, but it might be that we're all connected. I think that's probably the simplest, best, or the question I get the most is, are you part of AutoTrader UK or are you part of AutoTrader.com or any other AutoTrader in the world? And the answer is always no, obviously, but that's probably the biggest misconception.
That's fairly positive, really, isn't it? I suppose. I think the answer to that question quite often is more complex. But I suppose, given the simplicity of what you guys do in the nicest possible way, as a consumer, I understand exactly what AutoTrader is. And I guess most of your customers know that, don't they? Yeah.
So, I mean, that really, from a business point of view, is one of the misconceptions. Another misconception is also that we sell cars. So from a consumer point of view, a lot of consumers think that we into actually physically buying and selling cars, and we're not. I get that less and less nowadays, but it is a misconception I've come across.
What are you doing to change that misconception?
Just doing what we do best, marketing cars.
And naturally that changes.
Naturally it changes anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think that misconception was probably more relevant. That second misconception was probably more relevant when we were a magazine business. Now we're a fully digital business, 20 times bigger than we ever were in print.
Yeah.
And I think on the first misconception, the nice thing about being AutoTrader is that it's a worldwide brand that isn't unified in any way.
Yep.
And probably the most recognized marketplace in the world.
Definitely. And in terms, obviously a new year, we're back into 2020 now, into February. What is AutoTrader aiming for this year? Have you got anything specific that you're planning to do?
Yeah, so from a South African point of view, we've just cleaned up the market's data, underlying data sources. So what we've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years is we don't have the same sorts of data sets that governments have in the UK and in America. And what I mean by data sets is VIN data sets and metadata structures around make, models, and variants. So we've spent 5 or 6 years cleaning those data sets up. We've taken it. What is taken it? We've taken it upon ourselves.
That's the jet lag talking.
Yeah, probably. We've taken it on ourselves to create the country's first ever clean VIN database.
Wow.
Because our government doesn't have the systems to do it effectively. And we're now at the tail end of that. We relaunched our platform mid last year, and we're now for the first time you can search for a vehicle down to variant and equipment level.
Oh wow!
So the future of the business is squarely around data. And now that we've got the underlying data structures sorted out, it's what can we layer on top of that?
Yeah. And thinking about, again, this year, what are the biggest challenges that people are facing this year? If you can think of perhaps the top two.
Yeah, I think worldwide, if you're talking about consumers, worldwide, I think everybody is thinking twice before they spend money. I mean, we're seeing a worldwide recession in new cars. Same thing's happening in South Africa. We're in negative territory year on year, and the end of that just isn't happening in 2020. So one of the biggest challenges is consumers are I think hesitant to spend money. We're seeing a swing to used cars, as happens because people have to drive. South Africa is a big place. The UK fits into South Africa 9 times. So it's a big landmass, and we're a car commuting nation. That's what we are.
Yep.
We don't have the public transport infrastructure that the UK has. So in saying that, the consumers will still buy cars, will still drive cars in South Africa, and so we're seeing the swing to used. So now it's which car dealers can compete effectively for that consumer's attention, and take the lion's share. So I think that's the biggest challenge for car dealers. Biggest challenge for the consumer is getting the best deal.
And thinking about that from the car dealer's perspective, what can they do to meet that challenge? Are there any specific things they can do this year to?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm going to talk from a South African perspective, and some of these challenges may be true in other countries as well. But from a South African perspective, I think that too many car dealers are advertising. Now, don't get me wrong. Nothing wrong with advertising. You've got to advertise. And too few car dealers are marketing their dealerships.
Okay.
And I'm not referring to marketing BMW or Audi or the car brands, but actually marketing their dealerships.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, once price transparency happens, once all prices are commoditized because of transparency, and demand and supply becomes transparent. We were speaking about data earlier on. Once demand and supply and price are transparent, the only thing left standing is going to be the car dealership brand.
Yeah. And I guess the experience they offer.
Exactly. Well, that's what I mean by the brand.
Yep.
Like when you put on a pair of Nikes, it's an experience.
Yeah.
It's yes, you've got the tick on the side, but it's an experience, and the same thing will happen with car dealerships. So I think car dealerships should still sell, still advertise, but put some effort behind building a brand.
Yeah. And how do they do that? I mean, we've talked with other guests about this kind of guest experience, almost like a hotel experience. Yeah. If I'm a car buyer, what should I expect from a modern dealership?
Very interesting question. And so I think the car dealership itself, the actual physical in-showroom experience, needs to be more of, or bring the consumer there for the reason that they came, and that is to buy the car, not to structure a deal.
Yeah.
In today's day and age, the car dealership is still used as a place to sign the paperwork, to structure the deal, to negotiate, all that stuff. The experience inside the showroom should be about the product that they came there for, which is the car. And that creates the experience, creates the brand once you've hooked them from a brand point of view online. So car dealers can do a lot, I think, to change that. How do they change that? One of the biggest things I'm into at the moment is automotive digital retailing. Take all of those deal structuring elements and move them onto the internet.
Okay.
Which then creates the ability for a car dealer to create the in-showroom product experience.
So you can pretty much spec up your car online and even go to the point of buying it as well?
Well, all of that process can, or some of that process can happen online. You can still do some of it in the dealership because dealerships will remain relevant, I think, because of fulfillment.
Yep.
People are social animals. We like to touch, feel, experience things, even clothing. The fulfillment part is I want to try it on.
Yeah. Yeah.
The why is Amazon buying up bricks and mortar stores?
Yeah. They've almost gone backwards, haven't they? In that
Exactly.
respect? Yeah.
Now, so in that vein, are car dealerships going to go anywhere? I don't think so anytime soon.
So if we headed 10 years into the future, for example, what do you think the 2030 car dealership would look like?
I mean, we all know that OEMs are trying to go direct, right? Tesla's got a jump on everybody, and it's going to take that amount of time for the OEM to try and replicate what Tesla has already done.
Yeah.
So we've got a window of opportunity, and in doing that, will dealerships go away? I don't think so. Maybe the model will just change. Maybe it'll not be a franchise model in the future. Maybe it'll be an agency model.
Yep.
From a new car point of view anyway. Used car, how can used car dealerships go away?
They can't, can they?
They can't.
No.
How's that even possible?
Yeah, I mean, over here, so I don't know if it's the same in South Africa, there's so many over here.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you do see many rise and fall quite often, but equally, there's car dealerships near me, where I live, used car dealerships that have been around for years and years. You're talking 20, 30, 40 years. It'd be amazing if they weren't around, surely, in 10 years' time.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I look at it from a stock sourcing point of view. So, new car, where do you source the stock as a car dealer? You source it from the OEM, right?
Yeah.
So that could only turn from a franchise model into an agency model. From a used car point of view, though, where's the stock source? The consumer.
It's consumer. Yep.
Yeah.
On a completely different subject, although I suppose it's kind of related, driverless cars and autonomous vehicle technology. What's your opinion on that? Are you excited by it? How do you think that will change the industry in the next 5-10 years?
Up to about a year, 2 years ago, I was excited that my kids might not have to drive. But I don't know. It just seems like we've hit some kind of plateau. There's some kind of barrier that we're battling to get through. And does that mean that autonomous vehicles are going to be here in the next 5 years? If you think about all the non-autonomous cars on the road, how long will it take to get rid of that fleet? How long will it take for that fleet to work out of the system? You can't tell me that somebody is going to come along with a kit and you're going to bolt it onto your car and suddenly
you wouldn't
your car's
trust that, would you?
Exactly. So in all of that, I think it's still a long time before we have fully autonomous fleets. Or should I say the country's fleet, in any country for that matter, is going to be fully autonomous.
And how do you think if there is suddenly a bit of a revolution or something changes, that, like you say, that thing we don't really know what it is at the moment that needs to change, if that changes in say 5 years' time, do you think that will have an impact on the dealership in any significant way?
Well, the only way that anything can have an impact on the dealership is the change in the car ownership model.
Yeah.
So if the car ownership model changes, then something could happen to the dealership. Like if we begin having organizations that have car sharing, and car sharing becomes the main source of use of a vehicle, that's the only time that dealership model is going to change. If cars are still being owned by consumers, you and I, the dealership model is going nowhere.
Absolutely.
That's how I see it.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed that's the case. That's again, a slightly different topic. We have a lot of, obviously, young people listening to this, or people that are new to the industry or thinking about getting into the industry. What are the 3 reasons you'd give someone for joining the automotive industry?
From a South African perspective, 7% of South Africa's GDP comes from the automotive industry.
Wow.
So I would look at it from the perspective of, first of all, what kind of economy is there? And then second of all, I think it's exciting for another reason, and that is cars are becoming consumer electronics.
Yep.
And it's less about the engine and more about the software and the form factor or the aesthetics. And therein lies a lot of art, design, and technology that makes it exciting to get into the industry. We've now crossed the point of 100-year-old industry that's about to significantly change. Why would anybody not want to be part of the start of that?
Yeah, it's at the forefront of so much, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not just, like you say, the engine. It's and
Yeah.
they are commodities now, aren't they? Really, I suppose they have
Yeah.
always been to a degree, but more so these days.
Well, it's going to be like a mobile phone. I mean, first when the first smartphones hit, the real smartphones in 2007, you know which one I'm referring to. But when the first real smartphones hit the market, they took off, and every year people were upgrading, changing their phones. Now it's fully commoditized. People aren't changing their phones as often anymore. I mean, I look at my phone. I don't have the brand new iPhone 11.
No.
And I used to change phones every single year.
Yeah.
So cars will probably go down the same road. There's going to be this. There's going to be this acceleration with electric cars, and then eventually it'll slow down. But that period of acceleration, the next 10 or 15 years, are going to be exciting, I think.
I think really exciting. Yeah. What more of a reason would you need to join the industry, really? In that case, outside of AutoTrader South Africa, George, who would you recommend that people follow in the industry, or either specific influencers or other businesses that you'd recommend people follow to get the best advice and the latest news and that kind of thing?
So I mean, we follow most of the main news sites when it comes to what's happening in the automotive industry from a news point of view. From an industry point of view, outside of South Africa, just follow the world players. That's what we do. Watch AutoTrader.com. Watch what Cox Automotive is doing. Watch what carsales.com.au are doing. Watch what AutoTrader UK are doing. And then other players that play with data specifically. vAuto is a good one to watch. And anybody that plays in the data environment, because I think that's the next thing is creating businesses out of the data that sits in that transparency of price, demand, and supply.
Yeah. Do you think data is being misused at the moment in the industry?
Define misuse.
I suppose a better question would be, is it not being optimized in terms of the volume of data that people are collecting, whether it be a dealership or a business like yourself or even a marketing business, actually?
Yeah, then I changed the word misuse to missed opportunity.
Okay, yep.
I think data, there's a massive missed opportunity with the data sets that we all sit on. And I think we're all trying to figure out what to do with it, how to monetize it, how to make it useful to the car dealer in a way that helps their business become more efficient, to create that showroom experience that is about the product, trying to automate as much as possible.
You mentioned earlier about the VIN database. I mean, must be a hell of a database, that I can imagine.
Yeah, we cleaned 11 million records.
Wow.
And I mean, our car park isn't as big as yours, but so we took 5 years to clean this database.
Wow.
And we've got the cleanest one in the country now. And what we layer on top of that is the most important thing.
What did you learn from that process?
We learnt a hell of a lot of what not to do.
Yeah.
And that underlying data structures are as important as the creative ideas that go on top of them.
Okay.
A lot of people have these wonderful ideas about what we can do with data and what we can give to dealers and what we can give to the consumer from a tools point of view. But if that underlying data structure isn't solid, you don't have a starting point. You don't have a basis. You try and search for a car, and it might sound simple, a car with the sunroof, navigation in red of a particular variant. And if you don't have those underlying data structures, you just can't do that. You can't search. And you also can't then analyze consumer trends and consumer search what's the right word? Consumer search behavior.
Yeah.
Layered on top of that kind of data structure if it's dirty.
Yeah.
So our biggest lesson was the stuff right at the grassroots needs to be right before you can get creative with data.
I think that rubbish in, rubbish out is absolutely true with data, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Heading on to yourself, George, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where do you live, for starters? Obviously, you've travelled over here today. People will detect the accent as well. But whereabouts do you live in South Africa?
I live in Johannesburg.
Lovely.
And I actually was born and grew up part of my life in Cape Town.
Right. And
then my parents had this wonderful spark of an idea to move to Johannesburg. It might sound funny, but it's probably the best thing because that's where the economic hub is in South Africa, is Johannesburg. And I've been with AutoTrader now for 16 years.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
And what was your educational journey there? Where did you start in terms of when you started learning as a kid, but also then how did that graduate into the automotive industry?
So I've always been, I'm not a car guru, but cars have always been a fascination for me. But alongside that, technology has always been a fascination for me as well. And I remember when I was 9, my dad bought me a Commodore 64.
Oh, it's taking me back.
Yeah. So if you're like me, I'm 45, and so not that that's important, but it kind of like puts us into when I was 9, that the Commodore 64 was the thing we played with.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting on the lounge floor, and the only way to get this Commodore 64 to work was to actually write the code yourself.
Yes, yeah. Yep,
So
I remember.
So my dad and I sat and coded games. Ping pong was one of the games I clearly remember us coding into the tape drive.
Yep.
If you remember.
You used to have to wait for games to load for about half an hour, didn't you?
Yeah,
before
you
actually
push
start
play,
playing?
and exactly, you waited
Anticipation.
for this code to load on the screen, and so I think that's what kicked off my love for technology, and then automotive was always there until I joined AutoTrader, and then I think the marriage of technology, automotive, and specifically marketing, that was just kind of the 3 legs to the stool.
Yeah, so kind of almost like a happy accident, really, in terms of how it all kind of came together.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that my journey has been all planned.
No.
I don't think anybody's journey is all planned. I can't say that it was a mistake either. It was just right place, right time. Took the opportunities when they presented themselves.
Yeah, I think so many people that we've spoken to have said the same thing, really. They never necessarily planned to get into the industry, but it just happened because of a love of that, and it just came together, which is fantastic. Thinking about more specifics about your career journey, again, you don't have to mention names at all, but can you think of your best boss and why that person was your best boss?
So I think my best boss and my worst boss was the same person.
Wow, okay, why was that?
Because he stretched me. He taught me one thing. He taught me who the person was that I didn't want to be. And for me, that was the most valuable lesson. And that lesson was how not to treat people.
Yep.
And today, AutoTrader is run in a way, and myself and the team run the business in a way that is very people-centric, and not dictatorship-style environment where people have freedom.
Yeah.
And they're measured on their output rather than measured on their time at the office, as a simple example. And so while the experience was painful, for me, that was the catalyst for change, or the catalyst for my head switching on in I think the right people-centric way.
Sounds like it, yeah. So as you say, even though they were your worst boss, it was their bad qualities that made you realise how not to be as a boss yourself.
Yeah, very smart individual, incredibly smart individual, just didn't know how to treat people.
Yeah, that's quite often the case, though, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who's listening to this and thinking, oh yeah, I'm in that position now, my boss, or even they may even be a boss themselves and have that kind of inkling that they're perhaps not being the best boss they could be. What would be your advice to that based on your experiences?
In the first example, just take notice of the behavior and make some promises to yourself. And then make some changes. So really just take note. Take a 30,000-foot view, because it's very easy to get sucked into this situation. Don't do that. Just take an outside view. Have a look at it as if you're watching a movie.
Yeah.
And then take the lessons and do something different. If you're a boss that's treating people badly, you're not going to last long.
No.
Not in the 21st century.
No.
There's no place for that anymore. The old way in which businesses were run, General Electric style, doesn't work anymore.
No, it's very different these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
George, obviously you're one of our very first guests in the new studio. I don't know, did you see the office before we
No, it's my first time.
Okay,
yeah.
so you haven't seen the full transformation, but obviously it's pretty impressive. What's been your experience today with the Armchair Show?
The one thing that I'm going to take away from here is every time I walk through this office, I see something new, some subtle little thing that's new. I noticed the parrots on the perched on the top near the ceiling. I noticed the little What I learned afterwards was a coat hook bolted to the wall, but it's a chair. It's a little miniature chair, but bolted to the frame, should I say? So little things like that. It's I'll probably walk out of the studio now and notice something new again.
Yeah, literally that parrot appeared overnight, and I don't think anyone knows how it got in here.
Oh,
and
really?
we probably should explain it's not a real parrot.
Yes,
it's treated well. Obviously, you have your own podcast that you run, so you're very familiar with this. You're very comfortable doing this. We want to get plenty of people on the show, but we appreciate that it's not their usual job, and sitting in front of a mic, in front of a camera, can be a little bit daunting for people. What would be your advice to people who perhaps want to get involved in the Armchair Show but aren't quite ready for that yet?
I'd say just practice. And the way to practice is don't script it. Talk from your own experience. Talk with your own words, your own language. I know it's hard to say, especially the first time, but it'll take you one or two goes, and it'll be fine. It'll be absolutely fine.
We were talking earlier, weren't we? I think a lot of people don't realise it's just a very simple chat.
Yeah,
we edit it as well, so we can edit out all my ums and ers, which there's plenty of those. And it's just very relaxed. But
it's very relaxed, and it's the nice thing about podcasts versus radio is the pressure's not there, because you know that there's going to be an editing process, and I suppose if you really say something you don't want in the podcast, you can say, don't put that in.
Absolutely, yep.
And that gives you that comfort that you're safe, and I think that's another nice thing about podcasts.
Definitely. Well, it's been great chatting today, George. Really appreciate it. Thanks for coming over, and you can head off to bed now if you like. If you're still awake, you're still going.
I'm
impressed.
I think the adrenaline's keep me up.
Yeah, we'll keep you a bit longer. Brilliant. Thanks, George.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you.